It's 5 o'clock p.m. here in Seoul. Thanks for joining us on Arirang News. I'm Devin Whiting. We start with the coronavirus situation in South Korea. Today, there were more new cases than there have been in more than 3 months, with more than 700 reported today. It seems the country is headed into a fourth wave of the virus, which means there could be new restrictions. But that's a scenario the authorities want to avoid, not least because of the damage it would do economically. Jang Tae-hyun reports.
COVID-19 cases are popping up nationwide, and South Korea's health authorities say the country is on the edge of entering a fourth wave. According to a senior official at the Central Disaster and Safety Countermeasure Headquarters, the situation is worsening and the public has to remain alert. From mid-January to March, there were on average 300 to 400 new daily cases in South Korea. By April, that number had jumped to 500 to 600. Now it's over 700. More than 70% of cases are also coming from the heavily populated capital region. On top of that, of about 8,100 newly infected people over the past 2 weeks, the route of infection of 28% of them is unknown. South Korea's health authorities say the distancing level could be tightened further, but they are concerned about the economic damage that could cause. South Korea recorded 731 new COVID-19 cases on Wednesday. Of them, 714 were locally transmitted and the rest from overseas. There are 100 severely ill patients and 7 additional deaths. As of Wednesday, more than 1.2 million people in South Korea have received their first dose of a COVID-19 vaccine. Jang Tae-hyun, Arirang News.
The United States is recommending a pause in the rollout of the one-shot vaccine developed by Janssen, a subsidiary of Johnson & Johnson, after reports of blood clots. Well, that could be another hurdle for South Korea's own vaccination plans. Local health authorities say the country will get the doses it's already ordered, plus another 2.7 million doses by the end of June. Lee Kyung-eun reports.
U.S. health authorities on Tuesday recommended a pause in the use of Johnson & Johnson's Janssen vaccine after confirming 6 cases of post-vaccination blood clots among the 6.8 million doses administered.
This morning, the FDA and CDC announced that out of an abundance of caution, we're recommending a pause in the use of the Johnson & Johnson COVID-19 vaccine due to reports of 6 cases of a rare and severe type of blood clot following vaccine administration.
Along with the U.S., South Africa and the European Union have also decided to halt their Janssen vaccine rollouts. This comes despite J&J beginning delivery of its vaccine to the EU on Sunday. However, South Korea, which approved the vaccine last week, is likely to receive its doses as planned. A KDCA official said on Wednesday the country for now doesn't see any changes in the arrival of its pre-ordered doses, but will closely monitor the safety of the vaccine in the coming days. The Janssen vaccine is one of the new COVID-19 jabs the country is expected to roll out in the second quarter, along with those from Novavax and Moderna. And the government is aiming to import some 2.7 million additional doses by the end of June. That'll mean that South Korea will have been able to give at least 1 dose to around 12 million people. On Thursday, the country will start issuing vaccination certificates to those who have been inoculated. The so-called vaccine passport will enable people to prove their vaccination status by scanning a QR code, similar to how the country's digital entry lock system works. The government is considering issuing a waiver on mandatory self-quarantine to those who have their vaccine passports. Lee Kyung-eun, Arirang News.
In other news, South Korea's Nuclear Safety and Security Commission is urging the Japanese government to do an objective review of its plan announced on Tuesday to release large amounts of contaminated water from the Fukushima nuclear plant into the sea. The agency says it has sent a letter to its Japanese counterpart expressing the concerns of the South Korean people and also urging the Japanese authorities to monitor the disposal process in detail and to share the results in a timely and transparent manner. In the meantime, the NSSC is seeking to have a South Korean expert monitor the process together with the International Atomic Energy Agency. It's also decided to share data on its homepage more frequently and in more detail regarding levels of radiation in the ocean. U.S. climate envoy John Kerry is coming to South Korea this Saturday ahead of a virtual summit on climate change next week. That'll bring together world leaders, including South Korean President Moon Jae-in. Kerry is expected to meet with Seoul's Foreign Minister Chung Eui-yong, with whom he spoke on the phone twice last month about cooperation to achieve carbon neutrality by 2050. Announcing the trip on Tuesday, the State Department said the goal is raising global climate ambition. It said before he gets to Seoul, Kerry is going to Shanghai on Wednesday. That'll make him the first U.S. high-ranking official of the Biden administration to visit China. A report from the United Nations surveying 198 countries finds that South Korea has the lowest birth rate of them all. It also has one of the world's fastest aging societies, with senior citizens accounting for more than 16% of the population. Ji-young has more.
South Korea again this year has the lowest birth rate in the world. According to a report Wednesday by the United Nations Population Fund, the average number of children a South Korean woman is projected to have in her lifetime is 1.1. That's the lowest rate among the 198 countries surveyed this year and last year, but it's down 6 spots from 2019. An expert attributed much of South Korea's low birth rate to gender inequality.
In South Korea, there is a high cost not only to marriage and raising a child, but it's also very difficult for women to handle childcare while they're working. This is one of the reasons why women in this country choose not to have children.
On top of equality issues, she said other important factors are a tough job market in recent years and soaring costs of housing and education.
Raising the birth rate will require many things, including quality jobs, a national care system to enable women to stay in the workforce, and a system to eliminate sexual discrimination at companies.
The UN report also said that people 65 and older now make up 16.6% of the country's population, an increase from last year of 0.8%. This is far higher than the global average of 9.6%, ranking Korea 42nd in the world. The IMF said on Wednesday that South Korea needs to shift its fiscal policy to a longer-term framework to prevent the aging of its population from causing a debt explosion. According to the IMF Fiscal Monitor report released earlier this month, the country is currently able to keep up with the rise in debt caused by COVID-19, which is at 53.2% of GDP this year, but is expected to jump to 69.7% in 2026. The Eurozone and Japan currently have similar debt levels, but theirs are expected to decrease. Ji-young, Arirang News.
South Korea saw an increase last month in the number of people employed for the first time in over a year. That increase was for the country's youngest and oldest workers, but still a decline for people in their 30s and 40s. The increase is in large part because the economy is opening back up. Kim Sung-min reports.
South Korea in March marked its first job additions in 13 months, more than a year since the COVID-19 pandemic took such a heavy toll on the economy. Statistics Korea said Wednesday that the number of employed people last month was some 26.9 million, up 1.2% on year. The number of employed in their 20s rose by more than 130,000. There were more than 400,000 more workers in their 60s. However, the number of employed in their 30s and 40s both declined.
The growth can be attributed to eased social distancing rules, which started from February 15. There was also the base effect from the previous year's employment crisis in March.
However, the country's unemployment rate edged up 0.1 percentage point on year to 4.3%. Statistics Korea says this is because people who previously were not seeking work began to search for a job. Young adults between 15 and 29 had a hard time, the jobless rate for that age range reaching 10%, up 0.1 percentage point on year. By sector, some of the industries that were hit hardest by the pandemic saw an improvement in employment numbers. Job losses in face-to-face industries like the in-person service sector eased. The manufacturing sector saw a smaller decline in jobs, down 11,000 in March. South Korea's accommodation and food sector reported 28,000 fewer jobs in March, but that was not as pronounced as the previous month. Kim Sung-min, Arirang News.
South Korea's import prices are up for a fourth month in a row on a rise in oil prices. According to the Bank of Korea, the import price index for March stood at 109.73, up 3.4% on month. This is mainly because the price of Dubai crude, South Korea's benchmark, was up on year by more than 90%. Export prices also rose for a fourth straight month, up 3.3% compared to February. That was largely due to a weakening dollar, making the won more expensive, and higher prices for semiconductors, computers, and chemical products. The South Korean government has chosen 2 districts in Seoul as areas to be redeveloped for public housing projects. Once approved, close to 13,000 new public housing units will be supplied as part of efforts to help cool the overheated real estate market and help people get into affordable homes. Seoul-On reports.
Aimed at addressing housing shortages, the South Korean government has chosen 2 districts as candidates for new public housing projects. The Ministry of Land, Infrastructure and Transport said on Wednesday that it has appointed 13 sites in Seoul's Gangbuk and Dongdaemun-gu districts. Among the 23 initial candidates, the 2 districts were chosen following a feasibility review. The ministry says that through redeveloping low-rise buildings and areas near subway stations, it plans to provide 12,900 housing units in total in the 2 districts. If the project goes ahead as planned, Gangbuk-gu District and northeastern Seoul will be able to supply around 3,500 units in 7 areas close to subway stations, as well as 5,000 in 4 low-rise residential areas. In Dongdaemun-gu District in the east of the city, just over 3,000 units will be provided in areas near metro stations and 1,500 in low-rise residential areas. If 10% of the current residents in those areas approve the redevelopment plans, then they will be designated as housing development sites. And for final confirmation, at least 2/3 of landlords need to agree within a year after the designation is first made. If these requirements are not met, the project will become invalid. Providing new public housing is part of the Moon administration's 25th real estate package, which was released in February this year. It aims to supply around 830,000 housing units across the country by 2025, including 320,000 units in Seoul. 서은경, Arirang News.
In sports, Toronto Blue Jays pitcher Ryu Hyun-jin has bagged his 60th career win in Major League Baseball. The Blue Jays beat the Yankees Tuesday 7-3 at TD Ballpark in Florida, which the Blue Jays are using for the start of the season. The South Korean lefty pitched for 6 2/3 innings, allowing just 1 unearned run. This is also Ryu's first win of the season, and he now has an ERA of 1.89. His 60 wins in the big leagues is a feat matched by only 1 other Korean pitcher, Park Chan-ho. The city of Seoul is opening a brand new physical space where the public can attend big online conferences in person. It's called Seoul-On, and it's located on the 2nd floor of Dongdaemun Design Plaza, which is easy to get to on public transportation. In the studio, there's an LED display 35 meters wide, which is among the biggest screens in Korea. It's equipped with state-of-the-art audio and video systems for events like talk shows, conferences, and forums. And there's room to install up to 120 seats so that events like those can be held in person after the pandemic. It's expected that this will help organizers save money hosting their virtual events, and eventually it'll be available for anyone to reserve and to use. And that brings us to the end of this newscast. Thank you for watching. More live news coming your way at 7 p.m. Korea time.